My name's David. Today I'm excited to show you guys some proven strategies to help automate and optimize your sales processes using the CRM. So what are we going to talk about here today? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to unpack the concept of automation. And it's a simple process, but it's proven to be a game changer when implemented. And then after that, we're going to go through a few different types of automation. We're going to start with assignment rules, approval rules, scoring rules, and workflows. And if we have time, we'll take a look at blueprints too. But these tools have been proven to really optimize your processes. So let's start by understanding what automation is all about. Like I mentioned, it's a simple process. It's not really a very complex process. So in Zoho CRM, automation refers to the ability to set up automatic actions that trigger based on specific events or conditions inside your Zoho CRM. Now, triggers. So triggers are the event that kickstart your automation inside the CRM. And that could be anything from maybe a record being edited, or maybe a new record being created, or maybe a task is overdue. So different ways to kickstart these automations. Now, actions are the events that take place after a trigger is fired. So these predefined actions, I'm going to touch on them here today, but they can be anything from an email that's sent out to the customer. So let's say maybe a deal closed and we won that deal and we want to send a thank you email to that customer. Automation can take care of it for you. Let's say maybe a task is overdue. We can send out internal emails to our team as well. So different ways to play with that, but it's simple, super simple concept. Automation is just triggers and actions. If this happens, then that will happen. So how does this apply to the Zoho CRM? So we can think of our Zoho CRM not as just a simple database that we put data into, but we can think of it as a highly trained assistant. All we have to do really is set the conditions, and our CRM will then work for us. So we need to think, what specific tasks do we want the CRM to automate? And at what point in the process should that take place? And just by combining these two elements, you can really optimize your processes, improve sales, and also on top of that, it helps improve customer satisfaction. Because if you're helping out your customers in a timely fashion, they're going to be happy. So I want to introduce you guys to my IT company, Sanger Hall Solutions. So we're a growing company. We've got a lot of new leads in the system. And we're trying to figure out a way to alleviate a lot of those repetitive tasks to allow our team to focus on what they do best. And automation will take care of that for us. So let's take a look at how Sanger Hall Solutions would handle a new lead coming into the system without automation. Okay, so here's an example. So let's say a new lead is created inside of our CRM. We would manually assign a task to that lead and the lead owner, and then we can set a due date manually. If that lead happens to be a referral, maybe we would tag that record. So as soon as we enter that lead record, we can see that tag at the top. If the annual revenue is more than $1 million, maybe we'll assign that lead to a new lead owner, a salesperson that's a little more qualified to handle bigger hot leads. So these are all things that you'd be doing manually inside of your CRM, but with automation, we don't have to. That'll take care of it for us. So let's get into the first type of automation that I want to talk about here today, and that's going to be assignment rules. So assignment rules seem pretty basic, but they really can help you automate the process of assigning leads to your salespeople. You can even use it for deals. As deals are created, we can assign those deals to the appropriate person. Just like my example, maybe we have a big deal worth a lot of money with a high value client. We can have those automatically assigned to the appropriate person. So what we want to do is be able to match leads and deals with salespeople, our team members, with the appropriate expertise. And like I touched on earlier, this will improve customer satisfaction. right? If you're connecting customers with reps who are best equipped to understand their needs, then they're going to be happy. Another great thing about this is a balanced workload distribution. So I'm pretty sure you guys have all come across times where maybe somebody, a coworker or colleague, is not doing much, but you feel like your calendar is pretty full. Or maybe vice versa, maybe your calendar is empty and a coworker is pretty stacked. Well, with assignment rules, we can go ahead and balance that workload distribution. So let's take a look at a couple of business scenarios here where we could use assignment rules. Okay, so we kind of already touched on these already, but lead prioritization, right? So leads with a higher annual revenue, we're gonna figure out how we can assign those to the appropriate rep. And I'm gonna show you guys here today. We're gonna get into a live demo. We're also gonna use region as an example. Let's say we have leads that come into our system that are from Texas. Well, I want any lead that's from Texas to be assigned to David, right? So we can do stuff like that. That could also be used based on their product interest, right? So maybe a customer is coming into the system with a certain need. Well, we can make sure that customer is connected to the right sales rep. And round robin, that's going to be another example. And that's where we can distribute stuff evenly, whether that's going to be tasks, deals, leads. That's a good way to do it. So let's take a look. So what I want to do is I want to jump into my demo account, and let's go ahead and build out some of our assignment rules. So I just jumped into my Zoho CRM for Sanger Hall Solutions. And from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the gear icon on the top right, and we're going to go ahead and access our setup menu. Okay, so I hope you guys are able to see here. Let me zoom in. So we do have this automation section, and this is where we're going to spend a lot of time here today, or during this session. And we're going to jump into assignment. So I have some assignment rules already made. Let's just go ahead and make one from scratch so I can show you what it looks like. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit this blue button here on the right side, and we're going to go ahead and create an assignment rule. Okay, so when you create assignment rules inside of the Zoho CRM, you first need to choose what module this assignment rule will be used for. And like I touched on earlier, they could be leads, they could be deals, tasks that come into the system, cases, or if you guys have created any custom modules, you can use those custom modules as well too. But for this example, let's go ahead and stick with leads. So as leads come into our system, the goal is to make sure that lead is assigned to the appropriate rep based on something. So I'm going to choose leads. I'm just going to give this a name real quick. We're going to call it test. And you can also leave a description as to what this assignment rule will do. So you guys can configure it. Maybe somebody else comes in, takes a look at your rules. They can see what they do. Okay, I'm going to skip that though. We're just going to hit next. All right, awesome. So this is the setup page. The first tab that we're going to be thrown into is going to be the rules tab. And this is where we set up those rules. We're also going to touch on thresholds as well, because let's say you have leads coming into the system and you have hundreds of leads. Well, you don't want to have a salesperson assigned 100 different leads or 100 different tasks. We can assign thresholds to kind of throttle that as well, but we'll get to that in 1 second. So the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a rule entry. So we have this section here. And who do I want to apply this rule to? So I could say all records, meaning that any lead that comes into the system, I can assign that to a specific person or a role, or maybe round robin them across my different team members. But I want to match records with certain conditions. So let's go ahead and use that as an example. So what I'm going to do is we're going to select that bottom option. And then we get to choose a field for the condition. So for this example, what I'm going to do is say, we'll use the annual revenue field as a condition. And I'm going to say any lead that comes into the CRM whose annual revenue is more than X amount of dollars. I'm just going to say $1 million. That could be our condition. Then I could say anybody who comes into our system, or any lead that comes into our system whose annual revenue is more than $1 million, I want those leads assigned to Travis. He's going to be our sales rep that handles enterprise customers. We can make sure those leads are always assigned to him. Now, we can also add additional people. It doesn't just have to be one person. We can go ahead and have Travis take on these high value leads, Victor, Zach, Janelle. And as I select and add more people to this assignment rule, you'll see here it's a little hard to read, but these users will be assigned in a round robin pattern. So pretty straightforward stuff. So that's one example. So we can build off of this though. So we don't have to just leave annual revenue as the only field that we're looking at. I could come over here and hit this plus sign. And I can say maybe we'll use the product interest. So their annual revenue is more than $1 million per year. Their product interest is, I'm just going to select option 1. And we can use that as criteria. So pretty straightforward, simple process. It doesn't take a lot to build out. You don't need a developer. You guys can build out these assignment rules and make sure your workload is distributed evenly, assigned to the right person. Okay, so down beneath this, we can also set conditions for the users who will be assigned these leads. So maybe I don't want to use a category here at the bottom. Maybe I want to use users matching certain conditions, right? So let's go back up to the top, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove the product interest criteria, and I'm going to use the city field. And I'm going to say any lead that comes into our CRM that's from Austin, we're going to make sure that those leads are assigned to users who are also from the city of Austin, so we can match them up together. So you can just choose users, choose role levels, but we can also set conditions to match them up as well. So pretty flexible. Now what we can also do is we can add tasks after the fact, right? So maybe anytime a lead that comes into our system or a deal that's created or a task that's assigned to somebody, we can add additional things to this, right? But let's just use this example. So we're going to say anytime a lead that comes into the system who's from Austin, we're going to assign those to users who are also from Austin. And we're going to add a follow-up task here at the bottom. From here, we can select Add Task, and this will pull up our Assign Task screen. Now, these tasks won't be specific just to assignment rules. If you've created tasks just for leads or for deals, you can reuse them. So you don't have to use or create a new task. Reuse the ones that you've created and add those to this assignment rule. Now, one thing that I didn't mention was, these leads that come into the system, they could come from different places, right? We could manually create those leads. We could use a spreadsheet to import those leads into the system. Maybe we have a web form connected to a website and a lead fills out that web form, hits submit. All of those different actions can trigger these assignment rules. So it doesn't have to be a manual entry. So I did just want to highlight that for you. But cool, yeah, that's going to be assignment rules, the configuration. Now, if I come up to the top, there's going to be this thresholds tag. We can jump in there. I haven't made any saves or I haven't saved my changes, but that's fine. So this is where we can implement that threshold. So if I select Create Threshold, I can say, again, we'll choose our module. I'm going to stick with leads for this example. Anytime we get a lead, I want to go ahead and put a threshold for Travis and also Victor. I don't want them to be overwhelmed with leads or deals, whatever that may be. So I'm going to choose these two users. And I'm going to say the max number of leads that they can be assigned for this assignment rule, maybe 25 in one day. And we can go ahead and set that. So pretty nifty. I've had one user who asked about assignment rules and they wondered, what if I have hundreds or thousands of leads coming into the system? Are we just going to have our users assigned hundreds and thousands of leads? No, we don't have to. So we can implement these thresholds here. But cool, awesome. Yeah, that's going to be assignment rules inside of the Zoho CRM. Let's go ahead and jump back into our presentation and let's look at a few different automation types. The next one that we're going to get into are going to be approval processes. So I think approval processes are great for accountability, right? So let's say you guys have company policies, maybe deals need to meet certain qualifications or even leads. Maybe as leads come into our system, we want to make sure that we have the right lead inside of the Zoho CRM. So these approval processes automate the requesting and obtaining of approval for specific record types, whether it's a lead or a deal, whatever that may be. So one example or one benefit to approval processes is we can avoid a lot of those manual requests. Simple example is, let's say we have deals inside of the CRM and we want to apply a discount to that deal. All right, so maybe that discount, it's a good customer. We want to give them maybe 30% off. Well, anytime I add a 30% off discount to a deal, that could trigger an approval process. Then I can have my manager come into the deal and approve it as well. Now that also kind of ties into the compliance, right? So actions that require managerial approval, high value discounts, that's all something that we can achieve here with these approval processes. And also, it also keeps you or maintains adherence to those policies that you guys create within your company. Also, I think it improves collaboration as well, because I'm sure it's pretty often where the salespeople, the sales team, the sales director, they're handling their deals, making those decisions, and often maybe key stakeholders or C-suite employees or sales directors, they're not really looped in all the time. They're not really too sure what's going on. So these approval processes can get those people involved. And I think that'll improve team collaboration, communication, and efficiency within the Zoho CRM. So just a simple process like approvals can improve different aspects in your process. So let's, again, take a look at a few different approval process business scenarios. So one thing that we can do is ensure lead quality. So as leads come into our system, let's say, for example, my IT company, all right, we get leads that come into our CRM, but we're really only focused on leads that are in the information technology industry. So maybe somebody comes into our CRM who's part of, some other type of service industry, retail, or whatever that may be. Well, we'll go ahead and have our management take a look at that lead and decide whether we should move forward or just disqualify that person as well. Also improves deal oversight, risk management. Another example is, let's say we're closing deals, and as soon as we mark that deal as closed, we want management to take a look at that deal just to make sure all the information that was input correctly and we're capturing the relevant information. So that's another way approval processes can help you guys out. So again, let's go ahead and hop back into the Zoho CRM. Let's go ahead and build out a couple of approval processes. And what I want to do is show you, what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll build out a lead. That lead will go into an approval process, and I'll show you what that looks like. And we can either reject that lead or accept that lead. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and hop back into our Zoho CRM. Now I could use this left side panel, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the gear icon on the top right, take us back to the setup menu. And instead of going to automation, what we're going to do is we're going to go to process management. And that's where we have our approval process section. Okay, so I have a couple of approval processes already made, but I want to make one from scratch for you guys just to see what it looks like. Simple process. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit add approval process here on the top right, that blue button. And just like the assignment rules, and then you'll also see the same thing for workflows and other automation features, we get to choose what module this approval process will be used for. So we could do deals, but I'm going to do leads. So we're going to have an approval process for leads. Again, we'll go ahead and give this a name. I'll just call this test. And we have the option to either choose to initiate this approval process whenever we create that record, but we also have the option to initiate that approval process when we edit a record. So yeah, the discount example comes into play here. You have a deal, no discount has been applied to that deal, but as soon as we add that 30% discount, an approval process will trigger. So we can either choose record creation or a record edit. In this case, we're going to say anytime a new lead that comes into our system, we want to have them go through an approval process. So I'm just going to use record creation. Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and add a rule to this process. The first thing that we need to do, let me zoom in for you guys, is we need to go ahead and set the criteria. So what type of leads do I want this approval process to pay attention to? So I'll go back to my example before. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit this drop down, and I'm going to look for a field to identify leads that need to go through an approval process. I could say something like this. I want to have any lead that comes into our Zoho CRM whose annual revenue is less than $100,000. Right? Maybe a small business, a small lead. Maybe our company is not targeting this type of lead. We want to go for big leads, but we'll still have an approval process take place just in case. Right? Maybe we'll move forward with this lead. You can also add additional criteria. So we can say if the annual revenue is less than X amount of dollars, and if the industry of this lead isn't information technology. Now, you can see I have this operator here on the left side, the and here. So pretty much what it's looking at is if the annual revenue is less than X amount of dollars and if the industry isn't IT. But I can just tap on this and make it an or. So either condition will fulfill this criteria. So they don't have to meet both conditions. They can meet either one. So if their annual revenue is less than X amount of dollars, the industry isn't IT, either one of those things is going to kickstart this approval process. Okay, so now we get to decide who's going to approve this lead. So if we click on the next option, and you can kind of see here my criteria set, annual revenue, industry. So who should approve? So different options. I feel like the most common option would probably be users, because you can choose the specific people that need to approve this lead. So I can say maybe Travis here needs to approve this lead, or maybe somebody else, right? We can have different people there. But we can also base this off roles too. So let's see what roles I have here. Okay, I've got manager, agents. Maybe we have like a sales director role. Anytime a lead that comes in, we can have the sales director take a look at that and approve it or not, or reject it. Other options too, the record owner, the manager of the record owner. There's different ways to play with it, but we're going to keep it kind of simple. We're just going to go ahead and choose users. And I'm going to say Victor needs to approve this and Travis. So I've got two different users, that need to take a look at this. We'll just go ahead and add Zach. Okay, so now the question is, who needs to approve? Do both people need to approve? Do they approve in order? Do they approve whenever they want? We get to decide that. So we get to set the overall approval method, and I can say anyone, right? So if Travis decides to approve this lead, then we're good to go. We don't need to worry about Victor. Or Zach, I should say, right? If Zach approves it, same idea. We don't need to worry about Travis. But we can also say everyone. We need every single person that I list here to approve this lead. Now, you can also specify the order. So do I want Travis to approve the lead first and then jump over to Zach? And then we go through that process? We could do that. But we can also make it parallel. So there's not going to be a set order. If Zach wants to approve first, he can. And then Travis after that, he can do that too. So you have different options there. You can also assign a task, but I'm going to skip that. But maybe as soon as something is approved or something is sent out for approval, we can have a task assigned to do so. Okay, cool. So I'm going to say anyone needs to approve this. And then we get to decide what actions take place upon approval. All right, so we mark them as approved, what's going to happen? Or what happens if we reject them? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at our different options. So anytime we have an approval process that's kickstarted and we approve that lead or deal, whatever that may be, maybe we can update a certain field. Right, so we approve the lead, so maybe I'll update the lead status and say this person has been approved. So we can go ahead and select update fields. And then I get to choose what field I want to update. So I'm going to say the status. And anytime we approve this lead, we're going to automatically update the status of this lead with the accepted status. So that's good to go. Now we have some other actions here too. If we want to assign a task as well, we can do so. So maybe after we approve a lead, we can have a task assigned to the lead owner to follow up with that lead. Or maybe a task that's assigned to the lead owner's manager, right, to follow up with the lead owner. There's different ways to play with that. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we're going to go ahead and create a task upon approval. And I have my task already ready to go, approve lead follow-up. And this will be assigned to the lead owner, and it'll be due in 2 days. So we're going to update the lead status and say that they've been approved, and we're going to assign a task to the lead owner to follow up with that person. We can also send out emails too. Maybe we want an email notification to go out to our team internally. Maybe we want to update the lead themselves, right? We approve that lead, we send an email to that lead and say thank you for your interest. We'll have somebody reaching out to you shortly. So I'll go ahead and click into this email notification. And I've got some emails ready to go, but let me go ahead and do this for you. You guys may have already seen this, but I'm going to quickly create a new email notification just to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to select this button here on the right side, and we can go ahead and give this email notification a name. I'm just going to call it test for this demo. But we get to choose where this email is sent. So when I hit this drop down, we can send this email to the lead themselves, to that lead email. Or we can send an email to the lead owner's manager, or if we want to add somebody completely different, we can just manually input their email address as an additional recipient too. So email notifications can be sent out, we update the record, we assign tasks to people. All that stuff is done automatically with these approval processes. Okay, so let's get out of here. I'm not going to save this email. We're just going to pretend we made it, and I'm just going to go ahead and select my lead approved email. And again, this could go to anybody. Now, there's some more advanced functions like webhooks and custom functions. Custom functions and webhooks are a great way to step outside of what the CRM limits you to, right? So if you want to go ahead and maybe connect to a third-party system or maybe a different Zoho app using a custom function or a webhook, we can do so as well, but we'll keep it simple. We won't do that today. Okay, so now we need to decide what's going to happen if we reject this lead. So same process. I can select the actions upon rejection option. We can set up emails. Again, these emails can go out to the lead owner, manager. We can update that lead status and say now, this person has been rejected. We're just going to go ahead and automatically update their field to say that they're rejected, right? So pretty simple process. Let me show it to you in practice, right? So we're going to exit out of here. And I've got this lead approval ready to go. And it's a little hard to see, but we're again looking at the lead status. And we've got some emails, we got tasks created, we got some actions that are happening after rejection. So let's take a look. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit the lead tab on the tab bar, and we're going to go to our leads module. We're going to go ahead and just create a lead manually. And we'll just go ahead and give him my name. And we'll say I work at Zoho. Okay, so I think the way I set it up was based on the industry. So I'm going to say that this lead is not part of the IT industry. So we're going to go ahead and modify that industry field to something else. We're going to say they're part of agriculture. I'm also going to say that their annual revenue, we don't know it just yet. We're going to leave that empty. And that should be enough to satisfy that approval process. Let's take a look. Perfect. Awesome. So we're inside of the lead record, and one thing that you may notice is here on the top left, there's going to be this icon here. That's indicating that we need a stamp of approval for this lead. Now, if I scroll over to the other side of that lead record, now we can see that this lead is waiting for my response. So I believe my user was one of the users that could approve or reject this person. So we can go ahead and select respond, and we can go ahead and get that done, or I can delegate this task to a different person, right? Maybe I want to involve somebody else. Now, that's how we can see that action take place within the record, but what if I'm not inside of the lead record? What if I just logged into the Zoho CRM and I need to find out what leads I need to approve, right? So where can we find that? So we're going to jump over to the My Jobs module within the Zoho CRM. And within this module, you have different sections for review processes, image validation, blueprints, but we have that approval process, and we can see that here. So as somebody logs into the Zoho CRM, they don't have to go searching for these leads. Just go to the My Jobs tab, see who you need to approve, knock them out, you're good to go. So yeah, that's going to be approval processes inside of the Zoho CRM. All right, awesome, cool. And one thing I did want to show you too before I move on is if I go back to the leads module, you'll see that icon there that's to the left of that lead name. That's again asking for that stamp of approval as well. So you'll also see it from there too. All right, cool, awesome. Let's hop back into the demo or the presentation. All right, so the next automation that we're going to talk about here today is scoring rules. So I think we all, have experience wasting our time with somebody who's not qualified. We might have, this is something that I've heard. People will have Zoho CRM or any CRM really. They have a list of leads inside that CRM. Nobody's really working them. They're becoming stale. So how can we identify whether a lead is worth working on, right? So that's where scoring rules come into play. So we can identify sales-ready leads based on criteria. So we can use different options, right? So let's say we send an email to a lead and they open that email. That could increase their score. That's considered a touch. So a touch could increase their score. Or let's say I email a lead and that email bounces. Bad email address, that could reduce their score. So different ways to play with scoring rules within the CRM, but it's a great way to identify who's hot and who's not within that leads module. And it doesn't have to be limited to leads. You can use it for different modules. I just think it fits pretty well with this module here too. So this really helps alleviate, that manual workload of, qualifying a lead, sending out emails, making phone calls. What we can do is I can set criteria from the get-go to let me know whether that person is worth giving a call to or not. And I'll show you guys here in a second what I mean by that. But what I can do is say, if a lead is from somewhere local, maybe Texas, we can increase their score because they're local to me. If that lead is outside of the US, maybe we'll decrease their score, right? Because they're going to be hard to reach. This also helps us prioritize leads and also contacts too, so we can identify the most promising leads within the system. So I think it also benefits things like sales productivity, lead conversion rates, more efficient use of our sales resources and time, and also a great way to personalize customer interactions because we know a little bit more about them as well too. So just like before, let's go ahead and explore scoring rules, how they can be set up, how can they be applied in the CRM. So let's jump into it. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit the gear icon on the top right. It's going to take us to the setup menu. And under automation, we're going to go ahead and jump into scoring rules. I've got one built already, but let's make one from scratch. So I selected new scoring rule on the right side. And again, just like before, we're going to go ahead and give this a name. I'm going to call it test. But I get to choose what module I want this scoring rule to be applied to. It could also be applied to deals. Maybe as somebody, a sales director, or maybe the sales manager is creating deals and assigning them to people. Based on criteria that's input there, that could also be used for scores. But let's keep it simple. We're going to go ahead and look at at leads and create scoring rules for that. You guys might be familiar with layouts too. We can have scoring rules applied to specific layouts maybe a patient layout or a customer layout, student layout, whatever that may be. But for this example, we're just going to choose all layouts. So no matter how they were created inside the CRM, we're going to apply these scoring rules to them. So I'm going to hit next. All right, cool. So this is the setup screen. So we can add descriptions, all that good stuff here. But the first thing that I want to touch on is the leads field section. So if I add criteria from here, then I get to choose what's going to increase my lead score, what's going to decrease it. So going back to my example, I'm going to hit this drop down and we're going to use the state field. And I'm going to say any lead that comes into the Zoho CRM who's from the state of Texas, we're going to go ahead and add points to their score, and I get to choose how many. Maybe we'll go ahead and give them 50 points. They're of high value to me because they're local to me or at least close by. I can add more to this too. We can hit done, and I can add additional criteria as well. And now I can say maybe any lead whose industry isn't IT, we're going to reduce their score. So same process. And as I scroll down, you'll see there's a bunch of fields. If you guys created custom fields, you can use those custom fields too to create scores, right? So maybe you have something specific to your company, to your industry, to your job, and you want to create a scoring rule based off of that, you can. So if I scroll down, I just want to quickly show you some of the different fields that I have in my account. There's a lot of different options here too. So we're going to go ahead and say, we already used the state. We're going to use the industry. And if the industry isn't IT, then we're going to go ahead and subtract points from that person's score. So that's the concept. So you guys can do the same thing. Use lead fields. If you're inside of deals, you would use deal fields and so on. Now, beneath that, we have our touch points, right? So we can go ahead and set fields that will either add or subtract points. But now we can also utilize touches. Now, what's a touch? So a touch would be like an email. If I send an email to somebody and they open it, that's a touch. So I'll increase their score. If they click a link within that email, that's another touch. So we can increase their score more. So somebody who's pretty active, opening our emails, clicking on stuff, they're pretty engaged with us. So we want to increase that score so we can identify them pretty easily. So what I'm going to say is for every email that's opened, we're going to go ahead and add maybe 20 points. All right, any email that's clicked. Now, it won't tell you what's being clicked, but if they click something, we're going to increase their score. And if that email bounces, we're going to subtract their score as well too. We can also utilize telephony, right? So if we make a call within the Zoho CRM, in case you guys didn't know, you can make phone calls from the desktop. You can accept phone calls too. You'll get a little caller ID as well too. But maybe they miss a call. That can reduce their score. So different ways to play with it. Maybe we're using Zoho Survey, and we sent them a survey with the Zoho Survey, and they responded to it. That could also increase their score as well too. So different ways to play with it. Maybe we send them a Zoho signed document, they sign it, that increases their score. So different ways to play with it. But after that's completed, we can go ahead and save it. I'm not going to save it. I already have one created. But what I want to do is I want to show it to you in practice. So how can we identify a lead? Or the score, I should say. So we can either go into the lead record, find the score and rule section, but you can also run filters too. And we can find those leads, create list views, different ways to play with it. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we're going to cancel out of this. And I'm going to be kind of quick because I do want to touch on workflows. Workflows is pretty big and I'm kind of tight in time. But cool. So we're going to jump into this lead here, Eastern Merchant. He's one of our, potential customers. If I scroll down within Eastern Merchant's record, I can find the score and rules section. And I can see he's got 20 positive points, 0 negative, 0 touch points. So this is the difference between those fields that we set up, like where I said if the state is Texas, we increase their score. that's going to be considered just the positive increase or the negative increase, depending on what we set up. The touch points, that's going to come from those email opens. We send an email to somebody, they open it, that's considered a positive touch. And then we'll have the total touch points and then the total score as well too. So if I get out of here and go back to our leads module, on this left side panel, we have filters. And there is a filter for score. So we can utilize these scoring rules as a filter, set our criteria, save that filter, and then anytime I enter the leads module, I can just select that filter, find everybody whose score that I'm looking for. So pretty straightforward stuff, but that's going to be scoring rules inside the Zoho CRM. All right, awesome. So let's get into what I think is probably the most powerful automation that we have. That's going to be workflows. So triggers. Let's talk about workflow triggers. So I kind of touched on it already, at least I believe I did, but triggers are going to be the events that kickstart these workflows. And yeah, we touched on these things already, but it could be a record action. Maybe we edited a record. That's going to kickstart a workflow. So maybe we went into a deal. I moved the pipeline stage of that deal to proposal price quote. That could trigger a workflow to assign a task to somebody to draft a proposal. Or maybe whenever a lead has been moved to the not qualified status, maybe that could trigger some sort of workflow. Or a better example is I update the lead status to contact in future. Anytime I make that change to contact in future, that's going to go ahead and schedule some sort of event sometime in the future. You can also use date and time fields. This is great for due dates, appointment dates, contract renewal dates. Let's say you have a contract expiration that's coming up and we want to be notified beforehand so we can prep for it. So what we can do is we can set rules that say maybe 1 month before a contract is about to expire, I want tasks assigned to the appropriate people. I want emails sent out. I want fields to be updated. All that stuff can happen with date and time fields. There's also external events that can trigger these workflows. I kind of touched on the form submission too, but a web form submission. Somebody fills out your web form, hits submit, that creates a new record inside of your system. That could trigger some sort of workflow too. So different ways to play with that. So some of the basic actions, again, I alluded to these things already, so I'm going to kind of go pretty quickly. But notifications, right? Emails can be sent out to our users, to the leads, to contacts, to people outside of the CRM. We can have activities scheduled, calls, meetings, tasks, update fields, pretty basic stuff here. Now, we have some more advanced workflow actions too, and webhooks, custom functions, actions by Zoho Flow. So maybe whenever something happens that kickstart an automation inside the CRM, we want to invoke some sort of webhook that's going to send data somewhere else or pull data from a third-party application. That can be done with workflows. Custom functions, that utilizes Deluge, our programming language. And again, this is pretty powerful. It helps you step outside of the CRM and maybe connect Zoho CRM to Zoho projects. There's different ways to play with it, but a workflow can do so. Another fairly new feature too is actions by Zoho Flow. If you guys are not familiar with Zoho Flow, it's a pretty powerful application that connects two different applications together when there's not an integration or maybe when you're looking for something more advanced. I'll go back to my projects example. Maybe whenever we win a deal inside of the Zoho CRM, I want it to automatically create a project inside of Zoho Projects. And I want the deal name to be the project name. I want the closing date of the deal to be the start date of the project. Different ways to play with it. But that's another advanced action that you guys can use. So let's go ahead and jump into the demo. So some of the examples that we'll look at here are going to be email notifications, reminders, updates, and maybe if we lost a lead, we can go ahead and have some actions take place to follow up with that person. So let's hop into it. So just like before, I'm going to hop into the setup menu. So we're going to click that gear icon on the top right, and we're going to go to our automation section, and we're going to build out a workflow rule. So I'm going to be fairly quick here. I'm really tight on time. So we're gonna knock this out pretty quick, but you'll see here how simple they are to set up. It doesn't take a lot. You could do it in less than 5 minutes. So just like all the other automations for the most part, we get to choose what module this workflow will be used for. So let's go ahead and let's use leads again. We'll keep it simple. But if I scroll down, you can see all the different modules, even custom modules that you guys have created. Those can trigger workflows too. So we're going to use leads. I'm going to call this test again, and we're going to hit next. So the first thing that we need to decide is when will this workflow execute and what's going to execute this workflow. So if I hit this drop down, we have a few different actions. One of them being the record score. So those scoring rules that we talked about before, maybe whenever a score is increased, that could kickstart some sort of workflow. Or maybe whenever a score is decreased, that could be used. Record notes, right? So maybe as a sales manager or a director, I want to know what's going on with my salespeople. And whenever my salespeople add notes to a record, I want to be notified about that. And I want to see what's going on. So we could use that as an example too. But I want to focus on date and time in record action. So the goal here is, for this example, whenever a lead has been marked as contact in future or not qualified or lost lead, I want some sort of future action to take place. So I'm going to choose a record action. And do I want this workflow to execute whenever I create a lead? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm going to choose edit. Now, do I want this to trigger when any field gets modified? We could. But I could also choose a specific field or maybe any field within a specific section of that record. Maybe whenever one of those fields within, as an example, a medical history section is updated, that could trigger a workflow. But I'm going to pick a specific field, and the field that I'm going to pick is going to be the status. And I'm going to say whenever the lead status is modified to the value, let's see, what do I have here? Let's just go ahead and I'm going to use rejected. Let's say we had an approval process that took place. We reviewed that lead, didn't work out, we hit reject. That rejection could trigger another workflow to do something else. Now, you're not limited to just one selection here. I could choose the accepted field or the accepted option or different options. So anytime this lead status is modified to any of these values, that could kickstart a workflow. So I'll leave it just as it is here. We're going to zoom out. Now the second thing that we'll have to do is set up conditions. So what type of leads do I want this to be applied to? I'm going to keep it simple for this example, but again, we can add criteria here. You can add multiple criteria. But we're going to apply this to all leads inside of our Zoho CRM. And we're going to hit next. So now we get to decide what instant actions and or scheduled actions do we want to have take place. So I guess the goal here is whenever a lead is marked as not qualified or rejected, what I want to do is have an activity scheduled, and I want to have maybe a task created. And I can create that task and make a new one on the spot, or I can go ahead and choose from one of my previously created tasks. Maybe a task that's going to be due in 60 days or 90 days, sometime in the future. I'm just going to pick one of these here and just associate that. We can also build upon this, right? So maybe we'll go ahead and assign this lead to a different user, right? We rejected that lead. Let's go ahead and move them over to David. David's going to take care of the rejected leads, and then we'll just go from there. We can also use notifications via email. But you can see here, we can also use some other options, maybe WhatsApp. Right? Something happens inside of our CRM, we have a WhatsApp message sent to somebody else, or maybe an internal notification using Zoho Click, right? So different options. Now there's also the Zoho Flow actions. So maybe whenever a lead is marked as something, we're going to go ahead and invoke actions by Zoho Flow. And when I select that option, this will allow me to connect to different Zoho apps or even third-party applications. So I'm just going to search for Google. It's nothing in there, I guess. Okay, we'll just kind of use something here, right? But I can say maybe whenever a lead has been marked as rejected or something, we're going to go ahead and have some sort of event take place in the future utilizing Zoho Flow. But yeah, that's going to be workflows in a nutshell. And forgive me, I kind of blew that pretty quickly. I'm tight on time, but yeah, that's going to be workflows, approval processes, assignment rules, lead scoring rules. These are great ways to automate stuff inside the CRM where you're alleviating a lot of that manual workload, those repetitive tasks. We're getting rid of that stuff, and now we're able to focus on our duties, focus on sales, customer satisfaction as well. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys here today as far as automation. Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you.